We are back and we are ready for the big one. It's the Armageddon game between Hikaru Nakamura and Magnus Carlsen, and the players are ready and off they go. And there we see that Hikaru, well, he's changed tack and instead now gone and developed his Knight Areti formation.
And that was crazy from Magnus Carlsen. It's Armageddon. He only has 7 minutes for this game against Hikaru's 10, and he spent 10 seconds just adjusting his pieces, just giving away the Magnus Gambit. 10 seconds now. Symmetrical position, early days, of course. But Tanya, it looks like both players, they obviously really want it, but both very calm.
You call it crazy, I call it boss move. I mean, that is a statement of confidence that I don't even need that extra 10 seconds having the 3-minute deficit. And look at the moves coming in fast and quick. I think for Hikaru, it's absolutely key that he keeps his time advantage going. He cannot afford to let the clocks level out early on.
Yeah.
And he looks away to the side. He's just trying to remember his opening preparation. This is well-known stuff. It's the solid variation of the kind of symmetrical Grunfeld. And there has been a trade of pawns, though, the White Queen coming out.
You know, earlier we were talking about their rivalry, right? And this, I think, is when their rivalry really shines. When you go into these formats, you know, when you have to have a decisive winner, the clocks are ticking constantly, is when I think Hikaru truly is Magnus's biggest rival.
Mm-hmm. And he's so smart about his choices as well, Hikaru. He understands what kind of positions he should be aiming for, how to keep the tension alive. And he'll be making use of that 17th piece, the clock.
You would think that, but he's in the tank now. He has been for a while, Hikaru, trying to remember his opening prep. Pawn to e3, moving the rook, moving the bishop out. These are all the main moves. Maybe he was just trying to choose what he thought would be most annoying for Magnus. But he did burn a minute or so of his time advantage just on that last go. Still 2.5 minutes up. Magnus now has a bunch of moves. I've played this position myself before. Knight to b6. Again, very logical, but the player's yet to pick up maximum speed. It's always tiny margins between these two, though, that decide it, Tanya.
Mm-hmm. Wow. And Hikaru started with that 10-minute base time. Magnus at 7, still looking very cool. He does centralize his own knight, attacking the bishop. So a big question, are you going to give up the bishop pair, Hikaru, or will you fall back and sort of just say, I want a long game? I do like the position if you've got that clock advantage, you know, to avoid all these trades. You want to come back with your bishop and kind of look for that, for your chances later on. But he goes more aggressive, offers a trade at the center of the board.
Yep, it's a nice thematical move. You know, you're inviting Black to either shut down his Fianchetto bishop or make that trade, and then Black's kingside will be weakened. And just taking this decision is actually going to cost Magnus some time, and time is not something that Magnus necessarily has. And there we see a trade of knights. Easy decision for Hikaru. He's just going to capture towards the center.
You know, if you want only a draw to seal the match, you're always thinking about keeping more trades. And I think that's why he didn't sort of step away with ideas like f6. Instead, he kind of lines up for another trade of the bishops, centralizing his own piece, also eyeing the d5 square right now to retreat, attack the queen. Who is happier out of the opening, David?
I think Magnus slightly, not because he's fully equalized yet. I'm not sure he has. White has the center. White will have some minority attack pressure on the B file, but I think Magnus knows he's trading pieces. And with a clock disadvantage, you want simplicity. Endgames, Magnus is fantastic. Not just at winning, we should remind everyone. Magnus also knows how to draw all these horrible type of endgames, pawn down, rook endgames. He knows exactly what needs to be done. So Hikaru needs to be careful not to trade off too many more pieces, I think.
Yeah, but he's playing tricky moves, right? You know, he's preparing the advance of the c-pawn. And I like the fact that the queen on b3 is just tying the knight down to b6. There's going to be pressure against b7, as you've indicated. And this is the kind of position that White's plan is pretty simple. It's just about pushing those pawns forward, gaining space. Magnus has to be very accurate here, not to drift into a significantly worse position.
Yeah, I wish I'd been asked that question after White's last move.
I must say.
True, true. Okay, so Magnus struggling for moves, maybe moving the black queen out the way, centralizing the rooks, but once White builds a big pawn center, pushing the c-pawn forward, maybe backing it up with a rook, it's definitely pressure on Black to come up with a plan.
And look at it, Magnus taking a lot of time, hesitating, more than a minute on a move, and that's a lot in the Armageddon. And you could see it, Hikaru getting confident, and Magnus with a big move, a committal one, a pawn sacrifice. Do you accept it? But that would mean a double pawn, very weak pawn formation, the knight falling back, hitting that pawn, the queen and the rook lining up. I don't think you keep that pawn for too long.
Yeah, this is a typical Grunfeld defense concept. You basically give away a pawn, which Hikaru does grab. I'm really shocked by that decision. And you basically say, okay, your pawn structure is ruined. Even if I'm a pawn down for the rest of the game, I will have compensation. Magnus now much happier. I hate that decision from Hikaru. I think he should have kept the tension. In Armageddon, he was 3.5 minutes up.
I think it had so much to do with the clock, right? Hikaru's playing the clock as much as the board. He'd rather spend little time and make not the best move than finding the absolute truth in the position right now. Still, everything to play for. You've got the minors on the board, the extra pawn alive, the rook coming to the d1 file. And look at that move, bishop h3. It stops rook c8. It controls a very key square. So c5 will not fall very quickly.
And also he's being tricky because he wants to just ask questions about Black's lovely bishop there on e4. Now the white knight can spring forward or retreat wherever it chooses. And there you see, it's centralized. It was a kind of a really anti-positional idea to capture that pawn on c5, but I do feel that it is actually paying off. And Magnus, yeah, he's like the world #1 for a reason. He understands exactly what he needs to do. And he just says, hey, I'm going to break out. I'm going to maximize activity.
Yeah, he's basically saying I'm going to be a pawn down for a long time, Magnus, or at least for the foreseeable future. But he just wants to open up his pieces. The black rooks lacked open lines, and the A file will come open if there's a trade of pawns. That's a classy move from Magnus. I just feel that Hikaru is banking too much on a positional game, and that's not how you beat Magnus Carlsen. This is why he doesn't beat him in big games enough, because he goes into positions like this, which Magnus knows how to draw more often than not. The clock, not Magnus's friend. I think that's the main chance for Hikaru here, but everything else so protected, so coordinated for Black. I really fear for Hikaru's chances in this position. The white rook's just not on the ideal squares. Big threat now on the a2 pawn.
I think this is just going to be about the clock. I think we're heading to a big time scramble, especially because the queens are on the board and, you know, flagging isn't just allowed, it's actually encouraged in this format. And I think that nobody knows better than Hikaru. But he's got to pace up if he wants to play for the clock. He's got about a 1.5 minute edge.
Yeah, that's half of the time advantage he started the game with. He's got a 1 pawn edge as well, but I fear that might not last too long. If you push your pawn forward, maybe Black will just offer a trade of queens. Maybe Black will double up rooks on the A file, swing across, and very hard to see what White's doing. The white bishop now does look a bit offside compared to its centralized counterpart here.
But there is a very flashy move on the board. You can just dive in with your bishop to e6. It doesn't do that much other than defend the pawn on a2. But the whole point is that that bishop is poisoned because there's a knight fork on e6.
I love it, Jovanka. You have to play that move in Blitz. You
That
have to.
is gorgeous.
Scare the opponent at the very least.
I think Hikaru might even go for it. I mean, it does have purpose. You defend that a2 pawn. The bishop isn't hanging there. There's a big fork if you take it.
Hikaru,
Come on, Hikaru.
You just need to move.
Yeah,
just any move. A3, A4, bishop E6, whatever. Just, you got to move.
This is what he can't let happen. He can't just give Magnus result odds for nothing. He has to keep that pace on the clock, and the clocks are leveling out.
It's only 30 seconds now between them.
No, he's frozen. And, you know, he knows it, how important it is, but he's unable to make a decision right now.
Yeah, you can't go into the tank because this is Armageddon. Black has draw odds, and the players only get 1 second increment once they've passed move 40. And Hikaru's, he's in calculation mode, but he's just indecisive. He can't find the right way.
He spent over 2 minutes on this move. It's Armageddon chess.
No, he can't do this.
Blitz chess at this point. You can't spend 2 minutes on an innocent-looking move. The tension is still ahead. The tricks, the tactics, those are still in the future.
He's got less time on the clock than Magnus now.
He's frozen.
What is he doing?
He's paralyzed with... He's just totally frozen here.
And this is what Magnus says, that somehow against him, you know, Hikaru, who'd usually blitz these moves out, completely destroy his opponents. Something happens to Hikaru against Magnus in these critical moments.
Yeah. And now he retreats the queen to b2.
That's a move you make in 20 seconds, if that's your decision.
Zero calculation involved with that move. Just have to make them quick. And Magnus improves his rook. He's getting ready to double up on the A file against a very, very weak pawn. Yes, he's down 1 pawn, Magnus, but he's got the draw in hand.
And the problem isn't that queen b2 wasn't the best move, but the problem is just the amount of time that Hikaru took to make it.
Jovanka, bishop e6 lands.
At last, it appears on the board. But you see, it had some shock value because Magnus just retreated his rook, and now the bishop comes to b3. It ties together the queen side, but Hikaru has to take care of his king, which is looking pretty bereft of defenders.
But now Magnus, up on the clock, has the flagging, trying to flag advantage, and needs only a draw to win it. If the bishop and the queen line up on the light squares for Magnus, you're eyeing those checkmating patterns that you're talking about.
And now Magnus has just started steamrolling with the h-pawn. The white king is going to feel nervous, right? h4 on the agenda, opening up the h-line. This is really difficult move to handle, and he plays h4.
And it's a mistake. And this is what happens under pressure. You crack.
Bar drops. It goes all in black's favor. Maybe it's the most natural idea of bringing the queen in. The white king has no defenders around it. Literally only a rook on that half of the board. Black has a bishop, knight. Brings the knight forward, Magnus. Apparently not the way to profit from Hikaru's mistake, but he's lining up some tricks. If the white pawn steps forward, it's not a double attack. The black bishop can save itself by taking the white knight. Magnus has taken away the e3 square from the horse there. Still looking good for black.
I mean, all of Hikaru's forces are on the third rank or below, right? Nothing aggressive in the position. On the other hand, look at all of Magnus's forces. The bishop, the knight, the rook on the open line.
Ooh, another mistake from Hikaru, moving in the wrong direction. He needs to activate his pieces. He wants to move his knight out the way. He wants to bring it to the c4 square, but yeah, Magnus now needs to go on the attack.
You can come back with your bishop, line it up with the queen, start threatening checkmating ideas, but Magnus going all out with g5.
Wow.
Big move.
It is initiating chaos and also enticing Hikaru to hit that panic button. But knight to c4, okay, that was what Hikaru wanted to do. The rook is now under
Magnus
fire.
taking big risks. Suddenly it's a 3-result position. Clock's totally level. Yeah, place your bets now, ladies and gentlemen. Anything could happen.
I mean, he doesn't move the rook. Instead, he goes all in. And, you know, a draw is sufficient. And wow, if that is Hikaru's only move.
It apparently is.
Only move not to be losing immediately, Hikaru Nakamura. It's the blue arrow for those of you watching at home. Queen across to d2. He doesn't play it, Hikaru. He's opened himself up for a check. That looks terrifying. Again, Magnus's best move now is to give a check with his queen on the open diagonal against the white king. Still crazy, though, the position.
It's crazy because 3 pieces are hanging. The knight, bishop, and the rook. Yes, you give a check. The white king steps up. You still need a follow-up. You know, you don't know the bar is screaming that you're winning here.
Yeah, it feels tempting. It feels strong, the attack, but Magnus still needs to be accurate to crown this game off. And, yeah, still anyone's position. The clock, level, position, crazy. What are we expecting?
Yeah, I do feel like Magnus, he has to now get into the zone because 3 of his pieces are on fire. We have the rook under attack on a5, the bishop and the knight, which is forked. We give the check. Now the white king, where to put it safely? Tuck it in the corner. Makes sense. But the knight now can jump to f2. That's now a possibility. There's also pawn takes pawn in the air.
Everything's hanging. The house is burning here. Every single piece. The knight, the bishop, the rook, the white pawn.
But it doesn't matter if you checkmate the king.
That's true. That's the most important one.
If your house is burning, you're losing everything anyway. Don't save anything. Just pawn takes pawn, ignore it, let your pieces hang. Go for the attack, go for the white king.
He's got 1 minute. I get your idea. Pawn takes pawn, retreat with the queen to e7, come in through that h4 square.
There's a way in, but he needs composure to find that one, Magnus.
And now Magnus under the minute.
Has he found it? Will he go for this idea? Or has he spotted something else? Hikaru, he takes a sip. That's a sign of a player feeling confident.
Yeah, that's a psychological move there. But Magnus, he doesn't get increment for a while. He needs to move. 40 seconds. It's only moved 29.
And the increment is just 1 second. Barely enough time to make a move when it comes to over the board.
Magnus is frozen now. 30 seconds. He needs to move. Any move.
He does.
He's reaching for the knight.
Oh.
Any move. He moves his
He
bishop
moves
back.
bishop back.
Gosh. He takes all that time and makes a bad move.
24 seconds. That was the 29th move for black. He's still yet to get that increment. I don't think he makes it. It's physically going to be tough to make that number of moves, let alone the surprises that lie in store.
Exactly, especially in this kind of a position where there's no obvious move. Hikaru, he picks up that extra exchange, and now Hikaru is in a better position. He needs to find that queen transfer, threaten that check on g5.
He doesn't. Wow, he pushes his pawn forward. Magnus sacrifices his knight. That knight is poisoned. Double exclamation mark move. The bishop will swoop in and capture on e4. If the knight is taken, that would end in checkmate. The knight is jumping into e3 to f2. Hikaru has just blundered on his last move. I think he missed this one.
But 21 seconds for Magnus. Is that enough time?
Well, Hikaru is doing all the right things. He's trading off the attackers. Knight jumps in. White's king is so unsafe. And do you see how Magnus just speeds up?
Magnus lost on time to Hikaru in one of the Armageddons last year. Will lightning strike twice? Queen trade or no queen trade?
He does it. The best move found. And look at that. Hikaru putting the pressure on the clock, pushes his own pawns. Magnus, he's got no time.
And he's setting up a checkmating idea. The rook was threatening to come into b2. And now it's Hikaru's pawns that are motoring down.
Magnus has blundered. White can keep pushing those pawns. Pawn to c6 is winning.
Hikaru about to win.
Hikaru finds it.
Oh my goodness, Magnus doesn't have time and he's lost on the board. Rook c1 seals the deal.
Rook c1 seals the deal. I think he's going to play rook b6 a second ago. Is he going to bring his rook up, deflect the black rook?
Will he find the move? He does. Magnus about to lose.
Now, wow.
Wow, stunning.
White gives away the rook to throw away black's coordination. White promotes. Magnus resigns.
Whoa! And Hikaru wins the Armageddon to net 1.5 points. But what a thriller of a game that was. It looked like Magnus was playing the brilliancy, an attack of his life. And then he just did not have enough time to execute it.
Just a brilliant Armageddon, and Hikaru Nakamura finally cracks the code.
He does. He takes down Magnus Carlsen. This could be vital for the